Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. Real Estate Coaching Radio is the nation's #1 daily radio show for realtors who demand authentic, real-time coaching. Get ready for fluff-free, unfiltered, full-strength honesty about what's truly working to get you into action, helping others, and making money now in today's real estate market. Now to our hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today is July the 2nd. Happy almost 4th of July weekend, Julie.
Yes, you as well. And yesterday was Canada Day, so for all of our Canadian listeners, a happy Canada Day and happy 4th of July weekend.
That's
I think
right.
Everybody needs to have a little breath and have a nice long weekend here.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I found a source for hot dogs, by the way, since
Oh.
you and I were both wanting something nostalgic and 4th of July-ish.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think Zoe in her whole life has only had one hot dog.
I know.
At the car show
That's right.
at Millie Island.
She was so
last
proud of
March.
herself.
Yeah. Well, so today we're going to be sharing with you a series of articles that we found that can only be labeled as fantastic news.
Yeah.
Remember, Julie and I were sort of playing with the idea that the second half of the year is going to be the complete opposite of the first half of the year in terms of, good news. So we're hoping, and it's maybe a fantasy on our part, but we're going to hang with it, that the second half of the year is essentially a complete recovery in every meaningful way. And so 2020 goes down as being remembered as the year of miracles, opposed to the year of the pandemic, the year of the depression, the year of locusts, the year of the UFOs, the year of the, whatever else. So we have pulled out some really, really fantastic headlines. We're going to go through these relatively quick. And then I have a question that I wrote down. I was meaning to ask all of you guys this a few days ago. And the question is if you could choose to be famous or to be rich, which would you choose? So we're going to talk about that in the second half of today's show. And also, before Julie gets to her first, I think, wonderful headline, there is a great announcement for all of you. The book, Harris Rules, is now available in audiobook form. So you can go to, obviously, Amazon or Audible, wherever wherever you get your audiobooks, and you can listen to Harris Rules. We started listening to it yesterday. The publisher hired a really professional guy to read it. It sounds absolutely it's just spellbinding. Did I say that right? Spellbinding?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Super professional.
Yeah.
I was really happy with it. So
I know, and you were worried. You were worried that basically not having us read it would not sound as good. But
I think it sounds better, actually.
It does, definitely. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I hear myself coaching agents that there's such a thing as transaction coordinators who love doing that and are actually way better at that than you are. And people reading Audible books for a living, I kind of like that. This guy clearly does this for a living. He was so good. So I was really happy with it.
But it was like an actor, though. He read the sentences that we wrote in our book better than we would have. Yeah. Well, it's because we would have read it, then we wouldn't have stopped ourselves from being able to go off and vamp on something.
That's true. He didn't do that.
He doesn't do it like we're doing right now.
Exactly.
Well, so the point of it is the book is available now. A lot of you have been looking for it, asking about it. We didn't think it was going to come out until the fourth quarter of this year. So for those of you looking for a great book to listen to over the 4th of July weekend, there you go. There's the top of your summer reading list, Harris Rules. So just go to Amazon, go to all the normal places you get Audible books, audio books, or just obviously you can also buy a paperback version of it as well. Harris Rules, go and jump on it. Almost 400 5-star reviews. All right, Julie, headlines. What do we got?
Yes, you got it. So we are going to start with the House follows the Senate in passing an extension of the COVID-19 relief money. This is good news because both Senate and House passed its $660 billion Paycheck Protection Program, which many of our listeners had taken advantage of. It was set to expire actually this week on Tuesday night, but now it's been extended through August 8th. And yes, of course, they wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't still money left. Remember that the first round of about $350 billion was exhausted in only 13 days, and then they had a second round of $310 billion. Of that, there's $140 billion left, but now you've got until August 8th to do something about it. And Tim, I've been surprised how many of our past clients and even friends of ours didn't know about it, were intimidated by the process, or for whatever reason else haven't taken advantage of that. So it's still out there until August 8th. And
so you guys, business owners, 1099, W-2, it doesn't matter. You definitely want to be seriously looking into the Paycheck Protection Program. Every one of you should be eligible for it in some form. Definitely apply. You'll get the money. The money starts out as a loan and it turns into a grant if you follow some relatively simple to understand and follow rules. All the information, essentially, we've decoded a lot of it because there was a lot of confusion. So there is a great download available for you. You have to join our free coaching program. To do that, just text the word survival to 31996. Text the word survival to 31996. And when you do, we'll send you back a link and then you can join the free coaching program. Look for the tile when you log in, and it's called Ultimate Agent Survival Guide. The first section of the Ultimate Agent Survival Guide. Hey, Julie, look. The first section of the Ultimate Agent Survival Guide is all the information on the PPP, the EIDL loan, mortgage forbearances, and all that good stuff. So if you've not done that yet, we've already done the heavy lifting for you. Just text the word survival to 31996. Text the word survival to 31996. Julie, I know the next topic or the next headline is even better.
Yes,
so go ahead.
Indeed. Housing market recovery. Things are looking up. This is from Housing Wire, which reports on both mortgage and housing news. Housing market continues to show positive signs of recovery, according to Realtor.com's weekly Housing Market Recovery Index. Yet, of course, the effects of COVID-19 still remain a concern. This is an index, they throw a lot of different things into this. The index is set at 100 and they rate it. How close are you to 100 or further away? Housing demand has bounced back as summer home buying is in full force. And that's putting a housing index reaching actually 119. It's higher than their standard. And of course, the story continues to be lack of inventory. But when it's on, when something's active, it is selling quickly. And as an interesting side fact, Zillow reported that, guess where, is the number one hottest market in the entire country, Columbus, Ohio right now.
Are you kidding me?
With an average days on the market of only 4. So, if you can believe that.
What?
So,
why wasn't it like that when we sold real estate there?
I know. It's because it's 2020. That's the answer to everything right now.
Well, hold on. That reinforces the idea this is the year of miracles.
The year of miracles,
That's
right?
right.
I know, it's crazy. So let's see. Next we have more good news. Record jobs gain of 4.8 million in June smashes the expectations. This is great news because the unemployment rate now has fallen. It's still a really horrendous rate, but it's falling to 11.1%. And, in the beginning of this, a lot of people had predicted it would get into even the mid-20s. So it's still high, but it's coming down. That's good news.
Well, the moral of the story, though, is remember that there are two numbers, there are two statistics in that, right? The unemployment claims reports come out weekly. And what you're seeing here is the number of new people applying for unemployment is falling, yes. But you're also seeing essentially the number of people get reemployed is rising.
Yes,
so
and
those are all good numbers.
And they only expected an increase of 2.9 million, and 4.8 million came back. So that's really good that we're beating the odds, based on what even economists have been stating. So that's definitely good news.
In the last one, let's do the interest rates because the one on Manhattan's not something of a good news thing, and I don't want to mess with our vibe here.
Interest rates, yes. Okay, so this is a Seeking Alpha article. Always has really good, interesting stuff. Mortgage rates fall to a new record low. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage is averaging 3.07%. That is just incredible for the week ending July 2nd. Which is down from last week's 3.13% and 3.75% this time a year ago. And remember, last year ago, people were saying, how could it possibly go lower? Well, it has basically 3%. Now, you can even get a 15-year at 2.5%, which is just crazy.
That is crazy. Why would you pay cash for a house?
I have no idea. When you can 2.5%, I mean, it's nuts. And I'll tell you what, some of our coaching clients are doing right out of our premier class, as well as our elite coaching clients. They are taking those facts and they are marketing to people who are paying very expensive rent and showing them that, you can buy almost like a $500,000 house for what they're paying for a 2.5, apartment.
That is incredible to think about.
I think that's great. I've seen some interesting bomb videos and stuff like that.
I mean, obviously a $200,000 house that costs essentially $500 or $600 a month or whatever it is at 2.5%. I mean, you should fire up a mortgage amortization calculator real quick so we can figure out what that is. But if you think about it, in markets where there's the average sale price is say $1 million, obviously the rates won't be as low because the people have to do jumbo mortgages, and so the rates are going to be higher. But still, jumbo mortgage rates are still somewhere probably in the mid threes. Wow, it's a shockingly good time in our lives to basically be locking in incredibly low interest rate mortgages, which spins me into a conversation I've had via text with quite a few people this week. People are asking me about what our opinion is on inflation and deflation, and they're trying to gauge when it's a good time for them to start picking up real estate, to which I give them the answer of what Julie and I are doing. We're keeping our powder dry. We're not optimistic or pessimistic as far as what the future holds. What we are is cautious because we're not so sure what's coming next. We're not so sure there's going to be, like for example, CoreLogic was predicting there's going to be nationwide depreciation last year, whereas you're starting to see inflation start to rear its ugly head, which means you might have the exact opposite effect on asset prices. So real estate costs could actually increase. At the same time, you could have essentially, in some markets, you could have real estate values decreasing, which will, I don't know what. I mean, so somebody has to be wrong, or the answer is all these things happen simultaneously, which leads to the Manhattan article, for example.
Yes, very interesting. Manhattan apartment sales. Remember, guys that don't live in Manhattan, they call them apartments. That doesn't mean they're rent. These are units that sell. Our worst on record, biggest plunge in 30 years. That's a CNBC article. Manhattan apartment sales in the second quarter fell by 54%, the largest percent decline in 30 years, according to a report from Miller Samuel and from Douglas Elliman. The median sale price fell 18%. I mean, you're talking about, appreciation or depreciation. Well, here you are. If you're in Manhattan, it's already fallen 18% with a median price now of just $1 million, which, to a lot of people sounds like, well, that's not so bad. But considering that it used to be $2 million, it's bad. There were only about 1,147 sales in the quarter, the lowest number on record, according to Compass. So, tough times there and very high days on the market. They said that while deals take a while to materialize, sales contracts also fell in June. Number of new signed contracts for co-ops fell 78% in June compared with a year ago. Signed contracts for condos were down 74%. Co-ops in the $2 to $4 million range were hit hardest in June with an 86% decline. That's tough, man.
That is tough. And just you're looking at situations. When was it the average sale price $1.8 million? It was less than 5 years ago, no?
I was going to say about 3. I'm recalling about 3 years ago.
So you're looking at people who, in a lot of cases, are essentially underwater in their properties by 50%.
Yeah.
And in those situations where you have a lot of these different forms of ownership with co-ops, and Julie rattled off a few of the terms that are unique to New York, there's no easy path to exit your property if you're underwater. And that's the reason during the last real estate crisis, New York had some of the longest period of essentially the foreclosure process. Someone could go years. Mm-hmm. I think New York State was actually the longest. You could go years living in your property, never making a payment, just because the added legality and bureaucracy that's associated with. Yeah, it's crazy. So look, overall though, the takeaway should be
But that just shows
things are going great.
Real estate is also very local, and you have to watch your own market. You got to know what's going on, not just in your town, but I read something. Even though that's as bad as it is in Manhattan, right around that $1 million range still seems to be moving. So, study your own market, know your own stuff, and see what's hot and what's not. Well, but by and large, it's good.
You mentioned Columbus, where we sold real estate for almost a decade, as being a hot market right now. I promise you, in Columbus, there are pockets that are terrible. There definitely are. So, again, to Julie's point, I think that's how you can have essentially depreciation during a time of inflation. Because even with inflation, an undesirable house in an undesirable area that doesn't even make sense as a rental still isn't going to want to, it's going to have to have the price lowered and lowered even during a time of inflation.
That's right. I mean, I remember that these things can be true at the same time, right? So we would have houses in Clintonville that would sell in 22 seconds with multiple offers. And then the next listing appointment, I don't know if you remember this, we had one out in Galloway, which was a very overbuilt, like just seas and seas of, I think it was MI homes. It was like Oak Creek phase 50 million. And so in neighborhoods like that, where interest rates adjusted at the same time it was overbuilt, the one that had the best options at the least price was the one that always sold. And I remember doing CMAs, there were like 50 homes that were exactly the same. And yet, the day before we had sold something fast. So, you just have to know your subject properties really well.
So the question that I've been posing to new coaching clients, because a lot of you guys are coming into real estate only having been in real estate for really, many of you are less than 3 years, is if you had to choose between rich and being famous, what would you choose? And the reason I'm asking that question is because a lot of you guys don't know how to proactively lead generate, and you actually think that the more sort of micro famous you are on the social networking whatnots, you actually think that's going to lead to you making money in real estate. You think many of you that there's a direct correlation between that, essentially Instagramming and social networking and Facebooking and lots of transactions, and there's not. And the problem that a lot of you guys are falling prey to, or the unfortunate part is that you're just going to end up being another one of the statistics. And I picked up an interesting statistic this morning, Julie. You might want to use this one.
Yep.
New agents, an average of 12 to 18 months, 84% will fail.
Wow.
So 84% of all new agents within, let's just say, 12 to 18 months are out of the business. And I would definitely suggest to you that the reason that so many agents fail is because they have lack of real clear, concise information on what they should be doing to be successful selling real estate. Hint, buy the book Harris Rules, now available in audiobook, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that when you look at why people are so willing to believe that social networking and all these other things will lead to them being successful in real estate, it's because they're choosing fame over being rich. And I want you to ask yourself the same question as to whether or not you're doing the same thing. Because people, generally speaking, one of the strongest, easiest ways to manipulate people, frankly, is by giving them recognition. And that's what this social stuff does. It plays into your ego. It basically makes us all narcissists, and it just seems some of this stuff has just gone off the tracks as far as the influence it has on people. But if you have a choice to be famous, famous where people, in your world know who you are, and then be rich where virtually nobody other than your customers know who you are, which would you choose? I'm on a coaching call. I've had this coaching call thousands of times, but I remember this one very clearly. I was talking to this gentleman. He was actually talking about joining our coaching program. He also wanted to join EXP as part of our EXP crew. And if you're interested in learning more about that, just text me direct and we can talk about EXP. 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. So I think he's about my age. He was maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older, doesn't matter. And he was telling me, because remember, he wanted to join our group and he also wanted to be a coaching client. So he was telling me about all of his success in his career. He was telling me about all of his awards, all of his accolades. He was telling me about all the things he did. I just listened to him. He just talked and talked and talked, telling me how great he was, basically. And Julie, is that your alarm?
That's my Premier Coaching alarm.
Oh, okay. It's out there? Okay. Yeah. Well, run to Premier Coaching then. I can finish the story.
Yep.
All
I
right.
remember who you're talking about too, and it is a very good point.
Yeah. And so we're having this conversation and I'm listening to him talk and I'm not, I want to be polite, I want to hear him out. But I've heard so many agents say the exact same stuff before. It's, as far as basically how amazing they are because of all the awards, the accolades, and the trophies and the recognition they've had over the years. And so what I asked him, so he to get him to stop and sort of so we can pivot the conversation, talk about something else. I asked him this question. So if you had the choice when you were younger, if you had to essentially choose, if I were asking you this question when you were 30, right, when you started down this path of all this recognition, ego stuff. And I asked you that question, this question, at 30, if you have to choose between being famous and being rich, what would you and how would you have answered the question? And he paused, which was nice because he gave himself a little break, and he thought about the question, and then he gave me the answer. He said he'd choose to be famous, and he said that's what he did. And then he started making fun of himself, and then the tonality in his voice even changed. And he started talking about just realizing, I think he already knew this, by the way. He had already had this thought. I don't think it was the first time he'd had this thought that he sort of made the wrong choice. He chose to be, he chose to want to be famous. I mean, he was doing billboards and moving trucks and all this stuff. And so I said I think he was 40 or 50 or whatever he was. And I said, so at your age now, same question, what would you choose? And then he laughed even harder and he said, obviously I want to choose to be rich. And I asked him why. And he said because he realized the fame or the perception of recognition and acceptance by, a bunch of people. He said he realizes how absolutely futile that was and how it did not bring him business. And so that's the same question I'm asking all of you today because it's a relevant question. If you're not rich, where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money, if you're actually not in a situation right now in your life where you have passive income coming in that's enough to at least cover your personal overhead, which is the definition of rich, right? So if you need $7,500 to cover your monthly overhead and you have $7,500 coming in, that is our working definition of what it is to be rich. And then, focus on that. That's the first step in creating financial freedom, is making it so you no longer have to work for your money. So he and I were adding up then the second part of our call, how much money he had earned, grossed, right? And all the years that he'd been selling real estate. And it was not a small number. It was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And here he was at basically my age, and he had nothing financial to show for it. Now, that was essentially a very important conversation for him to be having, because if he doesn't actually think that through, he's just going to follow that pattern again. Because his ego is addicted to the attention. He wants to see his face and his name up on the plaques and the awards and the recognition and the lists and all that stuff. He still has that addiction to wanting to have recognition, and he knows it, even though he knows ultimately that will betray him. That desire for that recognition will betray his ultimate goal, which was to be free, where, essentially free, being financially free, being the first step of that. And so that is, a thought that some of you guys need to be having. Now, remember the statistic I shared with you. 84% of all new agents fail within basically a year and a half or less. 84%. I don't have the statistics for what percent fail after 2 years or 3 years, but I bet you it's equally as shocking. So that means realistically that only 2% of all the agents that get real estate licenses every year even step outside of being essentially, part-timers or hobbyists. Kind of an interesting thing to consider. And the ones that basically are, I'm talking about transactions here too. So how much money is spent in real estate by agents on the silly things like the branding and the marketing and the trying to, make yourself famous, believing that's going to actually work, the social networking, obviously, doing all that stuff. How much money is spent thinking, hoping, praying that all that gimmicky stuff is actually going to result in a transaction, only then to find those agents waking up and realizing that none of those things actually worked as advertised, and now they're in a situation basically where they're failing out of real estate with debt. So that's what happens to a lot of people, because no one ever tells them when I just told them. So you do have to make a choice. Very rarely can you be famous and be rich, and so I'll strongly suggest to you that you focus on being rich. That ultimately is going to make you a lot happier than being famous. If you cannot have both, which most of us cannot, then choose to be rich. Choose to be financially free. Choose to not be beholden to a transaction and transactions for the rest of your life. Choose to remove the billion-pound gorilla off your back that is the central financial burden that most of us carry around. Does this make sense, listeners? That's a big question, and it really does start with going through the process like I took him through. Asking, did the younger version of you want to be rich or famous? And most of you, if not all of you, will say famous. And then add up how much money, you have earned in your adult working career thus far. And then ask yourself why you haven't accumulated more wealth from all that money. Because some of you, if you're my age, even if you've never been super successful, you still have earned probably $5 million, $10 million, maybe some of you $15 million. I have coaching clients that, earn $3, $4 million a year. So in their working careers, they've earned hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet when asked, let's look at your financial statement, why have you not accumulated more money? It's because what they spend their money on. And what they spend their money on are the trappings of looking famous, the trappings of looking successful that don't actually bring you any business. But your ego and the people selling you these ego and inducing ideas know that they can separate you from your dollars because of the fact that you have this innate desire to have recognition and for people to think you're successful. It's fascinating, isn't it? I think it's fascinating personally, because on the other side of this, you then start saying, you know what, Tim, I think you're right. I should have made the decision to pursue, being financially free. I should have had that be my North Star and not basically recognition from strangers. And I realize now in retrospect, had I actually, followed a path forward for financial freedom, that I would be a completely different spot in my life now. So learn from there's the old Chinese proverb, right? A smart man learns from his mistakes. A brilliant man learns from the mistakes of others. I'm sharing with you, listeners, the essential conversation that I've had with thousands of agents over the years, where I have not had a single one ever answer the question they wish they would have chose fame. Not a single one ever chooses that. They all choose, and they all would have wished they would have chosen to be rich. In other words, to be financially free, where their money works for them and they no longer have to work for their money. This makes sense, doesn't it? So if you're looking for your big why or your one thing, I would strongly encourage all of you to embrace the idea of being free. Because on the other side of the acceptance that that's the goal you're working towards, on the other side of just saying that's what I truly want, you'll have really amazing clarity. And the other thing it does is it prevents you, or at least it's an inhibitor to you making dumb financial decisions. Whether it's, buying goofy social networking things or buying goofy branding things, that will, if you have the goal of essentially being rich where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money. In order for you to accomplish that, you have to have lots of profit in your business, and you have to be prudent about where you spend your money. Just by having that as your goal, you're automatically going to start thinking at a higher level about where and how you spend your money. That in itself will give you guys a greater sense of control. Now, on the other side of it, once you've followed the rules in Harris Rules, the book and audiobook now, once you've drilled down on guiding your business so that it's scalable and you're making money from listings and everything's going as well as it should, you're paying off your debt, you're maybe taking advantage of one of these ridiculously low interest rate mortgages, you're streamlining your expenses, you've got your focus is laser focused on being free. Once you get to that point, you will find that you can actually accomplish being financially free, usually within 2 or 3 years, sometimes less depending on what your personal overhead is, because you're going to be so much more prudent about where you're spending your money. You're going to be so much more careful. You're going to have some internal conversations with yourself and maybe with your family about the whole idea of essentially saving money or putting money towards the retirement of debt, things like that. So many of us have fallen prey also to the whole concept of you better live for today, why save for tomorrow, that whole thing. There's a lot of people that essentially will borrow and borrow and borrow from tomorrow to the point where they have when tomorrow arrives, which it does, the older you get, the quicker tomorrow arrives. I don't know if you guys have realized that. But when that tomorrow arrives and the bill's due, then you've essentially screwed yourselves because you have so much debt to have to pay back, or you haven't accumulated over your career the skill set and the mindset necessary for you to be financially free. You understanding what I'm getting at here? So have your goal be to be financially free, where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. It's a very simple definition of rich. It's not some ego-induced big number where you're going to say, I want to have $10 million or whatever it is, or 20 million, or I want to be a billionaire. Those are just kind of ego-y statements, right? Nothing wrong with them if that's your thing, but that's what they are. For every single one of you, if you had passive income commensurate with your personal overhead, you would feel amazing, right? Allow yourself to have that feeling, just, associate it with that feeling for just a bit in your mind. Tell me how that feels. Doesn't it feel like almost like stress melting away? Doesn't it make it so that you all of a sudden have incredible clarity on what you're supposed to be doing? Or I think more importantly, maybe what you're not supposed to be doing in your real estate business. That's what I want you guys to just allow yourselves the idea that in your lifetime, not even lifetime really, in the near future, you could get to that point. You could experience that in your life. And once you do, you will never go back, because that is the ultimate award. You've given yourself the ultimate, the ultimate prize. You've given yourself freedom. And then you've also set in course the next leg of it, which is essentially to build a lot of wealth. With that wealth, you can positively affect thousands of people's lives if you choose to. These are all things that only come on the other side of the types of thoughts that I'm sharing with you guys today. Hopefully this resonates with all of you. Hopefully this is something that will put you in a different positive trajectory, that you then will have a much more rewarding and fulfilling life. The reality of it is that we do have a lot of headwinds that are inevitably going to be coming, probably quicker than normal, and I do mean that in the economy and all these other things that are happening. But we will continue, Julie and I and our coaching company will continue to do our best to keep you guys on the straight and narrow with regards to your education and your motivation. But remember, ultimately, it's up to you to get into action. So we can share with you the thoughts that successful people have. We can share with you the actions that successful people take. But you're ultimately going to be the one that has to implement these things. So if you're asking yourself for direction right now, you're saying, Tim, what do I do next? Like, what exactly should I be doing? I'll tell you the simplest thing for you to do is implement the 90-day massive action plan. That is free. It's included in the free coaching program. And the 90-day massive action plan will tell you exactly what you should be doing for the next 90 days. And you're going to discover, no matter where you are in your real estate career, that the 90-day massive action plan is exactly what you want to be employing, because it does cut through the Mickey Mouse. And you're going to see in the 90-day massive action plan, it's all about doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, because that's how you build momentum. You don't build momentum by playing in real estate. You build momentum by focusing on what it takes to build a meaningful business, and essentially the meaningful business comes from you having a skill set that other people are willing to pay for. And the more people you help accomplish their goals, the more of your goals you'll be able to accomplish in your own lifetimes. But you need to take action on that right now and text the word survival to 31996. Text the word survival to 31996 and join the free coaching program. So happy 4th of July weekend. And happy return of Formula One for those of you who watch Formula One. I know there's probably at least 3 or 4 of you. Austria is unfortunately the first, it's the first official race of the 2020 season, which I'm looking forward to watching very much. Hopefully I can get it down here in Puerto Rico. You never really know. But in the meantime, if you guys want to talk with Julie and I about joining our EXP crew, our EXP family, EXP Realty, we believe, there's no doubt. EXP, it's amazing. When Julie and I started working with EXP, it was January of 2019. They had 15 or 16,000 agents, and I learned as of this morning they have 31,000 agents. It's the fastest growing real estate company, has to be in the history of the world, really. There's so many, tens of thousands of agents from all over the United States, and now EXP has expanded to Canada. They're expanding to Australia, New Zealand, just all over the world. This is a global phenomenon. If you want to know what it feels like to be in the right place at the right time, join EXP. EXP stock on NASDAQ has gone up by like 50% in just this year. So many amazing things happening. You definitely need to consider pursuing EXP. You can go about doing that 2 ways. If you're just getting started with wanting to get information on EXP, just text the word EXP to 31996 and we'll text you back a video. I think it's a 9-minute video that walks you through everything. If you want to move forward quicker with EXP and you want to talk with me about being a partner in Julie and I's EXP team, just text me directly on my cell phone, which is 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic 4th of July weekend. And hey, be safe. Thank you for continuing to make this the number 1 listened to daily podcast in the world for real estate.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows. And until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.